Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Now we focus now on Serbia, where reportedly today students are planning a mass protest march from downtown Belgrade to New Belgrade, blocking major intersections and the city's central bridge. Now, a few days ago, protesters and police clashed in the city of Novi Pazar in southwest Serbia after masked men tried to break up a protest taking place in a university building. Since last November, Serbian students have flooded the streets demanding justice after a deadly infrastructure collapse blamed on corruption. We now speak with Ivanka Popović, former rector, pro-glass activist, to assess Serbia's current crossroads. Good to have you back on TVP World. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, Professor, can you just tell us about this apparent protest in the middle and center of downtown Belgrade? What can we expect of this? What will this look like? How many people are gathering?
Well, I think we can expect a lot of people today. These things are accumulating. We've been protesting for more than 10 months, as you know. This tragedy in Novi Sad was just the tip of the iceberg. It was a really tragic event that led to the death of 16 people, but it also shows a massive use of let's say, extent of corruption in Serbia in major infrastructural works, but in general, all aspects of life. And this is something that for young people especially is unacceptable, but I think it's unacceptable to all of us. And in that respect, not only students, but people and citizens all over Serbia are demonstrating for rule of law and independent institutions. And as you can see, every few days we have some kind of incident where we see the abuse of police for the needs of a political party, as we saw in Novi Pazar. Also, we see actually a very strong disregard for university autonomy, because you know that police cannot enter an academic institution without explicit allowance of the university governance, which is then meaning that we have a very unacceptable situations that the student voice is not being heard. So generally, we have a very disturbing situation in Serbia where we also now see a positive aspect, and that is the unity of citizens and students trying to, through peaceful means, without actually confronting the police, fight for a better Serbia. And what we see as a result of this, we see arrests of people who have been peacefully demonstrating. And of course, this is something that only provokes or causes further protests. And today in Belgrade, first of all, as a sign of solidarity with Novi Pazar, but also with the major corruption scandals we have had in Belgrade, this mass protest should be a reflection of all of these problems, and also to show the government that the protests have not died down, even though we are at the peak of the summer period, but the people want change and that they will insist on it. And more or less, this can only happen through snap elections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you about, because I know that some time ago when we spoke, there was also, of course, as we said, these have been building over months. I do want to jump into what's happened in the last few days in Novi Pazar as well. With that, there was altercations, masked men involved, fighting with the police. I know that some time ago when we spoke, we also had instances of hooligans involved who were also trying to instigate violence. Is this a similar type of pattern emerging here?
I would agree with you, and of course I have to say these are alleged these are hoodlums that are allegedly operated by the ruling party, because it's only in their interest for these people to do these things. So we have actually a political crisis that has been going on for many months now, and actually for years, but let's say it's peaked in the past 10 months. And I think this use of political thugs is something that we've seen in history before, and it never leads to, let's say, a good ending. So I think it's very important to emphasize that the ruling party is using all means available to it, those that are also illegal, in order to maintain power. And Novi Pazar, of course, is a community where there are ethnic groups. There are Serbs and Muslims, also other ethnic groups. And I think this is an attempt artificially provoke what would be seen as an ethnic conflict. And this is, of course, not the case, because when the students had a very big rally in Novi Pazar, there were wonderful messages of solidarity between the ethnic groups. And I think all of us, regardless of ethnicity, religion, or any other type of grouping, want the same thing, and that is rule of law. And I think the government would like to change this narrative.
Mm-hmm. You're saying that once we began about that final sort of idea that's wanted, the desire is snap elections. I mean, we've already had President Vučić, let's say, sack one of his ministers out of all of this. But how likely is it, despite the growing, let's say, force on the street of students and others across Serbia, how likely are snap elections in all this anytime soon?
Well, let's say that elections are imminent. I really cannot predict whether they will be before they are scheduled or we will arrive at the date of scheduled elections. But elections are imminent, and Mr. Vučić cannot change this. He can try to portray the situation differently. He can try to portray that he's full control of what's going on. But unfortunately, he isn't anymore, because citizens are simply not accepting this type of autocratic rule. And I think that Mr. Vučić will have to comply and call for elections. And then we shall see what happens then, because as you know, also the election conditions are so unfair that it's very difficult for any type of opposition to Mr. Vučić to fare in, because Mr. Vučić controls the electoral lists, and he actually does not allow for anyone else to win. But I think now, with the massive scale of the protests, and so it's not easy for him to manipulate the elections. And of course, if he does, then again there will be mass demonstrations if the elections are stolen. So no matter how you play this out, some change has to occur.
Mm-hmm. We see this, as you said, building over these last months, very much also in the student community, youth activity as well. Also very interesting activity like the students cycling all the way to Strasbourg and really showing the case to Europe. I'm curious again about where this also goes in terms of leadership. I mean, Vučić is still the man to beat, if you will, politically. What does that say? Do we have any sort of student movement politically? Are there any particular voices that are leading this? I mean, we ultimately will need that for any kind of change, won't we?
Yes, I agree with you. There needs to be a new leadership form. What we have now, because the students have been so worried about student leaders being targeted, and rightfully so, that they would be arrested, beaten, or in other way manipulated, students have kept the leading members of the movement very low key. Also, they are practicing, as you know, direct democracy, so they are avoiding also the emergence of leaders. But what we see now in this stage of this social struggle, where it's not only students but all of the citizens, because the students have more or less passed on the protest to citizens. That means that there will have to be partnerships made between student groups, opposition parties, any kind of civil society groups or NGOs. It's generally a grouping into a national front that will be the opposition list to Mr. Vučić's party in the elections. And I think we are now seeing that these negotiations or talks between these various active groups in Serbia has started. The students, of course, are not politically very experienced, so it's a bit of a learning curve and it's taking time. But on the other hand, I think through this learning curve that we are witnessing, we are seeing the emergence of really socially and civically aware young people, not only students, but generally a new generation of Serbian citizens that want to live in a different kind of a country and that they want to take active part in the political life of Serbia.
Mm-hmm. It's very much about youth and it's very much about students, but how is this resonating with other parts of the population, farmers, workers across Serbian society? Do they have, I'd say, the support of that section of society as well, or are those still gravitating more towards the established order by Mr. Vučić?
Well, what we have seen clearly over the months is that, all parts of the educational systems, from kindergarten, primary, secondary school teachers, university professors. So the educational sector is behind the students. So are the farmers, so are lawyers. We have seen some other groups also supporting actively the social movement. What we haven't seen is people who are employed by government companies that are more or less blackmailed into submission. They are not openly voicing their dissent. But the various polls have shown that the shift in the support to Mr. Vučić is declining. And the rector of the University of Belgrade has sort of taken on a symbolic position as a now figure that has become visible, emerging as a contrast to Mr. Vučić. That doesn't mean necessarily that he is the leader of the movement, but he is becoming a symbol of this. So we see that now we have more or less a situation, a standoff, that Mr. Vučić does not have the majority anymore. But also there are a sufficient number of passive citizens that are not voicing their opinions that need to, let's say, become clear in their stand. And this is now what we see in the months to come will be actually lobbying and going door to door to try to reach these citizens. And the students have been doing this, and I think they will continue doing this, to talk to people, to try to get them to state their positions, why they're satisfied or dissatisfied with their living conditions. And I think it's a process that cannot be stopped anymore. And this does not in any way imply what party, or let's say what ideological option will be the result of these elections. But what is firmly clear is that all of the participants in the process want rule of law and independent institutions. Whether there will be a slightly more left or more right government at the moment, it seems to be irrelevant, because when you don't have rule of law, these slight distinctions are unfortunately irrelevant. When you have an autocratic rule, then all of these differences actually are not relevant for the final way the country is run, and this we have to change.
Mm-hmm. You're saying it's very much students, but it's also very much a show of democracy in action. Look, we'll close it there. Thank you again. Always a pleasure talking to you, Professor Ivanka Popović.
Thank you for your time.
And that concludes World Talks here on TVP World. But stay tuned, much more coming up right here. So stay tuned. Goodbye.